Hey, gang, good morning. It is 6 a.m. here in the lovely, beautiful, yet rainy city of Olean. So, guys, I wanted to touch base with you. It's the morning podcast. As you can see, if you're watching on video, you can see my hair is still, morning hair. But that was my yerba mate. I don't know if any of you have ever tried yerba mate. It's very delicious. I went down to, I think it's Nature's Remedy. They might go by a new name now, down in Allegheny, like 2 years ago. And the lady turned me on to some yerba mate, which is like South American, like their form of tea. They grind it up. Sometimes they smoke it. Mine is unsmoked, and then I add a little. She recommended adding a little matcha to the bottom, which is like a ground super plant or whatever, and it usually gives me a real big boost in the morning, which is kind of phenomenal this time of morning. And especially for you guys, you want me to be like Gatling gun speed. So, oh boy, well, what do we have going on? Well, I want to start by um, I want to start by addressing some of the downfall in our society. As I was about to start this podcast, I could hear a couple of my neighbors getting into an argument. They live like half a block down from us. Um, I'm sure maybe you can pick it up on microphone. It sounded like a woman leaving a guy's apartment, calling him a piece of shit, that he sells drugs, and that his mother doesn't love him. Um, so, I mean, we should have a moral segment of the show. I know a lot of you think that I'm immoral or amoral, but that is not the case. As I get older, I find myself more grounded in my morality. Um, so that said, it just goes to show you, like, why do people sell drugs? Why do people do these things? Why do people make the decision to be in a relationship with a drug dealer and a person whose mother does not love him? Um, and then you want to get in an argument with him at just before 6 a.m. in the morning, and wander out in the rain to get away from said person. Like, yes, it's not good that this person does all these things, but yes, it is also your own fault for making the life choices that put you in this predicament. Now, maybe it's not your own fault because you were raised improperly by your parents. Maybe your parents were absent. And I mean, that really goes down to the moral threads of our society, that, two-parent households strengthen, strengthening the bonds that parents and children have, um, you know, not completely in adopting this new age technology that this new wave of parenting, that, like, you can't discipline your children, you can't yell at them, or you're going to hurt their emotions, and their emotions are more important than mom and dad's freedom. That whole aspect, like you can't say, hey, listen, don't push your sister. Like, when I was a kid, you got beat. Like, and you can't do that now. But at the same time, like, now they're pushing it to the point you can't even yell at them, because if you yell at a child because, like, hey, don't push your sister. If you say that to a child and a child takes that inappropriately, they will say that you are abusing the child, because you should not be tormenting the child's emotions. And it's like, what is he doing to his sister? And it's one of those. Um, there's a lot of, like, upside down backward stuff. If any of you out there are interested in learning more about, like, being a parent today, I would recommend Family Unfriendly. It was a book we reviewed on the channel. It's very good. It kind of opens up the door to helicopter parenting and stuff like that. But we're going down a rabbit hole, I guess. That was just kind of astonishing. Just it happened yesterday too. People out at the corner right here right here at the top of the one way outside of my house. They were just standing there, like, not on the corner by the sidewalk, like on the corner past the curb into the intersection of the street, with their arms crossed, two of them side by side, with necklaces and hoodies. And like, why would you, like, if you're wearing a hoodie and you think it's cold out, like, you should not have your necklace on the outside of your hoodie. I don't know, that just, it strikes like it's more of something that you're trying to invoke in other people. Anyways, I had, like, my kids wanted to ride their bikes because it was nice out yesterday. It was definitely light, Maybe you wear a hoodie. Maybe you just wear a t-shirt because we've all acclimated to the cold and it's very warm out yesterday. So like why the guy is wearing a hoodie, I don't know. But yeah, my wife was like, listen, she's like, I'm in the middle of something. Can you go stand out there with them? And I said, sure, because she didn't want these nefarious looking gentlemen to, say something to our kids, snag one of the kids, do whatever. Like they were giving off a harmful vibe. And the longer I sat out there on the phone, I got a phone call from somebody and I was on the phone. And while I was pacing back and forth talking to myself, I kept glancing over at them and then quickly they dispatched and they went on their own way. But then I was able to say, hey kids, you want to go ride in the church parking lot across the street? Do you want to, my daughter wants to go down to the middle school. She's old enough now. She can bike down to the middle school. I trust her to do that, but not when there's nefarious gentlemen standing outside my house. Like it's you know, like they're up to no good. And, so anyways, that just, we could go down a whole rabbit hole on that one. Um, I, um, I would like to, kind of break down some of those thoughts in the future, but, this morning, I got a URL link sent to me yesterday. Somebody fact checking me because of the way that I was taught how CHIPS funding works. And so this individual is an engineer who deals with the DOT, and he sent me a .dot.ny.gov link, and it's based on CHIPS funding. And then if you see subsection 3 and 4, which I will put the link in the description below so you can do your own research if you're interested. And it does show that CHIPS funding is not, like I said yesterday, so fact check. I guess I'll be the first to admit that I was wrong. But then again, these are the things they're teaching aldermen. You go there and you ask questions and you get answers. And so I guess when somebody who's also an elected official that's been there longer or who is employed to do these things, they tell you what certain things are, I guess you should take them with a grain of salt, I guess, but I was taking them as fact. And it wasn't too far off, right? So New York State DOT checks I'll pull it back up. New York State DOT has two different funding groups that make up CHIPS funding. And so the CHIPS funding is, of course, it's going to take forever to load. Consolidated Local Street and Highway Improvement Program, or CHIPS. And so what they do is they are taking money from the TIF, which is the Transportation Improvement Fund, and then they are also using something from the LAF, which is the Local Assistance Fund. And so the process is they are I believe the first one. One of them is based on how many miles of road that you have, and they're giving you a percentage of it. They distribute that out to, counties, towns, cities, villages, boroughs, whatever. They distribute it out. And then there's also a percentage back of vehicle registrations based on location. So you're kind of getting like a refund on that. To the point that they haven't updated it in many years is a point of contention that I know that Vernon Robinson Jr. brought up in his post that we went over yesterday. And then I did a little diving because after I received that, I had to, do some delving into the system. So now Olean has 67 miles of road. Okay, and this is to show that what the person told me was more of a rule of thumb and not how they actually do it, which I guess I misconstrued. Either that or they misconveyed it. 67 miles of road. And so last year, the city of Olean did 3 miles of road. So if you divide that by 3, that's 22.33 miles or years in order for the cycle to complete itself. Well, I don't know if you've seen roads nowadays. So unless you have a brick road that, needs maintenance every 100 years, the average road lasts about 7 to 10. So if you were to try to go with the less conservative number on 10, you should be replacing 67 divided by 10. You should be replacing 6.7 miles of road a year. and 3 miles out of 6.7 is just under 50%. It's about 40, rounded up, it's about 45% of the road, of about the annual, what we should be doing annually in roadway. And I believe funding is probably a large portion of that. Now, CHIPS funding for the city is a give or take $500,000. Where yesterday I was saying it was about 436, 460, somewhere in that ballpark. It's probably, and I believe there have been minor increases, but it's probably somewhere between 450,000 and like 5.25. Which, if you were to take, also, here's the kicker. It's not just CHIPS funding that supplies roads. There's all these other little municipal, help us with our potholes organizations and grants, and winter weather grants, and all these little things that make up additional funding like CHIPS that go towards a municipality's road budgets, or can be used towards those. And then they also have their little caveats, like any grant does. If you've never dealt with grants, then we'll probably have a whole section on the show just about that, because that is a really difficult topic as well. Like, you have to do this, you have to do that. Prevailing wage, WMBE contractors, you have to at least offer it to a veteran-owned contractor, or show that you've made calls inquiring that people are veteran. Rabbit hole. Sorry. So, 3 miles of road cost the city last year $2.3 million. And that's total, that's grant funding and our contribution, right? So $2.3 million. We're just going to make it and then we're going to divide that by 3 miles. It ends up being 766 repeating. So $766,666.67 rounded per mile. Like, okay. So if we did 3 miles and we're supposed to be doing 6.7 miles to try to stay just ahead of the curve. Right now, I get that, like, most people don't understand this. We are not 86. 86 is funded by the state, and then they get federal funding as well to offset the state's costs on interstate roads. So roads like, 86 that might cross over into different states, they get percentages based on how many miles. There's a whole separate set of formulas that come up with state funding. But so, like, everyone's been complaining about the potholes on 86. That's your state. That's not, you're not going to expect the city of Olean to go out and do that. I mean, they might, if they were really, like, if you had a administration that was very very proactive and saying, hey, we're not going to wait for the state, we're going to do this because you're complaining and it makes our city look, you know what I mean? That would be a mentality that you could take, and I'm sure you'd probably still have to get permission. I'm sure, like, there's a bunch of past, present, and future DPW directors and PEs and DOT workers that would say, no, you can't touch that road because it's the state's, which could be the case too. There very well could be. So $750,000 per mile. That's a lot of money. So now, if you were to take that number and multiply it by 6.7, well, that's 5.36. Yeah, 5,136,666.67 a year, and we're spending 2.3. So 2.3 divided by 1.36. 2.3 divided by 5.136. Again, we're at that same 45% number. So we're spending 45% of what it should be. Now, if you were to take our 1.3, so let's say we're at $500,000 in CHIPS funding, right? So 0.5 divided by 0.3. Our CHIPS funding is 21.7% of our streets budget, based on how much money we spend on streets, right? Which isn't too far off. 15%, and you're saying, oh, it's 21% or almost 22%. Like, that's a 7% difference. Like, that, to me, that is negligible. Like, and I'm sure in previous years with pre-COVID, when these numbers were told to me, and when they said, oh, it's about 15% of your budget, It's supposed to be 15% of your budget. Like, okay. And then I'm hearing that, and I don't have the numbers on all the other ones that are coming up, but I'm hearing that a large portion of those are, um, a large portion of those are what we are supposed to be, or a large portion, like, sorry, yeah, brain fog. This is 22%, and I don't have the exact numbers on all the other contributing grants that we get towards streets, but if those numbers were right, like, hey, this is about 15% of your budget, this is what the state, this is what the state gives you every year for what should be 15% of your budget. It's like, yeah, well, we're right in there. It's a little bit more than that. So I guess we weren't too far off on what we're actually spending. So then if you were to say, hey, well, rather than, and it's good to redo roads, but you got to think like, man, look how many millions of dollars it's costing to do, it cost to do Washington Street. And then it's how many, how much did it cost to do, it's going to cost to do West State Street. Oh yeah, we're getting grant funding. Like, oh, well, where does the grant funding come from? The grant funding comes from tax refunds, or not tax refunds, income taxes. So the state takes your income tax. The state takes a large portion of our sales tax. The state takes, they have all these different mechanisms in order to generate revenue, so that they can, so that doling back out our money, essentially redistributing our money back to us and making us jump for it. And I think grant funding needs, I think you need to get rid of income tax first off. And then I think that you need to, get rid of, then stop redistributing our money to us. Like, do that and then increase our property taxes. You know what I mean? So that the local municipality can just afford to do it. And then you're not hitting everybody in the area up for, uh, you know, also hitting them up for income taxes. So it's just, I don't know. It's our systems, the evolution of our tax system has gotten a little out of control, and how they do things. And then they're, oh, let's change it this way and that'll help this and that. And the incentive structures are backwards. So people are changing it to incentivize this, or that instead of something else. Um, Instead of what they should be incentivizing it. Anyways, so if you took our CHIPS funding, 5 point, oh, $500,000 divided by 5.136, it's actually only 9.7% of what we should be spending. See? Isn't that funny? So yes, CHIPS funding is low if we were actually spending the money we were supposed to, and it's supposed to be a moniker for 15%. But it's, you're not going to get, I don't think raising the CHIPS funding, like raising the CHIPS funding would be helpful, but it's not necessary. It's not necessary to the major issue, which is the fact that we're severely underfunding our roads. That's it. Like, you're always going to have troublesome roads, right? You're going to have a road that needs to be replaced every 2 years just because of the way it is, washout. And we have less washout roads than, like little municipalities, Hinsdale, Cuba, all these little places with winding roads that go into back countrysides, and then, like, the road washes out. I'm trying to think if there's like a whole bunch of them that I've driven on in the last 10 years that just, you get called out to an emergency call and you got to go drive up this road and it's dirt and you got a 2-wheel drive van and you park at the base of the road because you're like, I ain't going to risk it. But we don't have any of that in the city. So, but yeah, those are that. So, like I said, I got somebody fact checking me yesterday, and I appreciate constructive criticism. So if I am wrong, and call me out. I'll do my research as well to find out like how I've misconveyed something. Maybe it is just something way I conveyed it that confused somebody into thinking that I was missaying something, or maybe it was I was told something that I believed as fact, and it was either I misconstrued it when I was learning it, or it was misconstrued, or it was misconveyed to me, what have you. But like I said, we just went through it. We took a deeper dive into your CHIPS funding. 20 minutes to talk about moral fabric of our society and CHIPS funding, which I'm sure all of you are super excited to talk about. So now here is the point of contention. So if all of you have hung in there for 20 minutes and you are willing to listen longer, here is my take on local taxes. And this is what I was going to talk about yesterday, and instead we dove into the alderman races. Um, so your local taxes, and I've made point to mention this to a few of the aldermen that that I talk to on a regular basis, people that will call me or I'll call them or whatever. Um, the current budget is proposed at 6.4% tax increase or something like that, 2.25%, 2.4, something like that. It's over 6%. And then what'll happen is it'll go to the council, and the council will try to save face and be like, "Well, but we we have to raise taxes above the tax cap, but we can probably," and this is the mentality of it, is like we can probably, and I'm sure every person doesn't exactly think like this, but the general consensus is that we will fight this down. So it's not 6.4%, but it's like 3.8% or 4.2%. And look at us. We've come to a compromise and we're all heroes and we only raised it 4.2%. It could have been higher. Like, okay. Well, me and a former alderman had been on the council, and we had talked recently, and he was like, "Do you remember being on the council and tax caps at 2%? And inflation is typically 1.5%. And you and I would always say, hey, like, maybe we have to raise it 0.5%. And we would, like, there'd be like dead pigeons nailed to the city building, to our own doors. We'd get rats mailed to us. Like, it was just like, it was like, you might as well just like expect the plague, if you tried to raise taxes by a quarter or 0.5%. And it's like now, the last couple of years, it's like they're, you know, you break the tax cap, you break the tax cap, you break the tax cap. Because guess what? 2% ain't cutting it. Inflation was what, like 8% a couple years ago, a year ago, year and a half ago? Like, the tax cap is like barely pacing with inflation. So, and then you can't go 0 years. You can't go years with zero tax increase. Like, because now all of a sudden inflation's got you. So now next year you have to raise it by 1.5%, compounded with another 1.5%, which, just to give you, for those math enthusiasts like myself, 1.5% by 1.5%, there is a 2.25% inflation rate for 2 years if you didn't account for it the first year. So you have to break the tax cap on year two if you go zero on year one. Or if you stay under, then eventually the piper is going to need to be paid. And that is the issue. And that's where I'm saying, like, we've gone, like, I mean, my 5 years on the council, man, it was, I don't want rats nailed to my door. And I was trying to keep people happy. And at the same time, I'm a taxpayer. I don't want to watch taxes go up. But what happens is costs still go up. I can't prevent costs from going. Oh, you're the alderman. Stop the costs from going. Like, yeah, right. That's super easy to do, right? You can't stop costs from going up. You can't stop. Like, there's negotiations that you're not a part of as an alderman. You're not a part of. Like, you're a part of it to a degree, but, like, when they negotiate, like, labor contracts, they go up 0.5%. They go up 1%. They go 3%. They go 3 years without an increase, and then they get a 4% increase. There's a lot of different ways of how they're structured, and, like, those are contractual, and now you have to do those. And then you have inflation, the cost of doing goods go up. They raise minimum wage, and then guess what? They have to, the wages of the cost to produce things goes up to compensate for that. That it has to, like, so now all of a sudden a gallon of milk costs more money, and the shipping of that milk, or we have to get salt. Well, the guys that dig the salt out of the earth, they're minimum wage employees, and guess what? And now it costs more to have them per hour dig salt out of the ground. So what do you do? Like, I'm using that as an example. I have no idea how they get, I'm assuming they pull salt from the ground, or they go to the ocean and they catch a bunch of water, and then they let it dry in the sun, and then they scrape this giant pan that had all the salt crystals on it. Like, maybe that's how they make sea salt. You know what I mean? Like, okay, so I'm not the greatest expert on how they make salt, but I'm just saying, like, that's, however they make it, I'm sure they don't have brain surgeons excavating salt out of the earth, or formulating salt wherever they do. And your rocks are roads are usually done with rock salt, sand, there's different, like if you're, really nice community, I'm sure you got some like magnesium and all these other things that they use, but it's like, man, what do you do? Like that's just a lot. And then so you raise the wage on the poorest, the least skilled worker there, and then guess what? The bag of salt goes up. The ton of salt goes up. Whatever it happens to be that you're buying, whatever moniker you are buying salt in. And then you have transportation wages and fuel prices, and the guys that, are handling fuel at some point, that those costs get relayed to the people handling fuel, and then fuel prices go up, and there's a lot of different aspects. It's very complicated, but once it happens, once the ball is in motion, some little piece of legislation from up top comes rolling down, it can decimate cities. And that's really where like everyone's like, oh, we just need living wages. It's like, oh, well, okay, but as soon as you do that, be prepared. Like your gallon of milk, your eggs, they're gonna be this. So you're gonna see an increase, and it ain't gonna be 1.5%. You're gonna see a 4% increase on the minimum wage is gonna be a 12% increase on everything else, because that's 4% on like three different monikers that make that product, and then to get it to you is another 4% increase, and it's like, man, you're at like 16% increase, and it's like, don't be surprised. Don't be shocked. Well, we'll blame the government. Like, no, because the government, the goal of the government is not touch your stuff. Like, they should be doing very minimal stuff, because the more the government touches, the more, um, it's like medication, right? The government, like, it can solve. We're gonna solve this problem. You got a headache? Take this. This is the government. It'll solve this headache. Oh, but it also causes dysentery and urinary tract infection and like six other things. It gives you gut problems. Like you've got explosive diarrhea now, but your headache is gone. And like that's the issue. So okay, well let's have the government do this and this to solve those problems. It's like, well then each one of those costs 10 more problems. So like it's like a hydra. You can't have the government solve all those problems. The government can solve like three problems, and then we have to live with the consequences of those 10 things that come off of each one of those. So 30 things you have to deal with as a headache because of the three things you ask the government to handle. And you can also expect the government to do it 50% efficient. That's 25% efficient. Like the government is nowhere. They're the epitome of anti-efficiency. So there's another rant. So there was another 7 minutes for me to lead up to how our taxes work, so that I can lead you up to what I've inevitably come to the conclusion of. Our municipality has to stop spending. So like if we're not spending, this is to our original point, if you're only spending 45% of what you should be on roads, and a portion of that is subsidized by government funds, and now you have to come up with the other 50% out of pocket, and some of what you've already put in is out of pocket, you need to find that money. But the budget's already very tight, and they're already breaking the tax cap. Okay, so how do we do this? I don't know what to tell you. If you haven't been outpacing inflation, and now you have to catch up with inflation, and every year you fall behind inflation a little bit more, or the percentage you should be increasing by to cover costs every single year, and you're not violating the tax cap, eventually at some point you have to. You have to. You have to more than just violate the tax cap. Like they're going to try to do this year. They're going to do like they're going to do a 3 or 4% increase. It's better than 6. It's like, no, because actually 6 gets us closer to the goal. Like I don't want to. And don't misconstrue what I am saying. I do not want to watch my taxes go up. I would love it if every year my taxes were 0. But I'm also a realist. You cannot not raise my taxes, and then in 10 years from now, someone's going to have to rip the Band-Aid off, and we're going to be the town of Dunkirk, or the village of Dunkirk, or the city of Dunkirk. Well, whatever, however their municipality is structured. That is unimportant to this conversation. However they did it, they did like a 96% increase in their taxes. And it was things like this. It's going to happen. It's going to have to happen. And if they don't do it sooner rather than later, it's instead of it being a 25% tax increase, which is probably what they're going to have to do, it's going to be a 40% tax increase. It's going to be a 60% tax increase. It's going to be 15 years from now, and it's going to be 98% tax increase, because they have to do it. They have to do it. We don't have to like it. And it's political suicide for anybody who's in office if you do this. But it's the way to right the ship. So how you right the ship is you're going to have to do a large tax increase to cover the costs that are going on. Like, sure, you can cut costs, but what are we talking about? You're going to cut $10,000 here, $12,000 there from a $19 to $29 million budget or whatever. I'd have to double check the numbers, but when I was there, they would always talk about a 16 to $19 million budget, and then somebody told me the other day it was like 29 million, and I'm like, what? 29 million? Where'd that come from? And I'm wondering if they're also including the water and sewer divisions and funds, which are completely separate. They don't go off our tax base. They're not allowed to go off our tax base. They have to collect their own revenue through water and sewer funds and billing. So, but you got to think that you're a $19 million budget to run the city, and it's like, well, I mean, if it has to be $25 million or $24 million, then you got to raise taxes to cover that, because you're not going to drum up sales tax. Like, you're going to spend more money on a marketing campaign to get people to spend money on sales tax than you're going to bring it in sales tax. So like, that's moot. You're not going to increase that number other than its natural growth all by itself. And so that's what you're going to have to do. And it sucks. And then also, if you can't afford certain things, you're going to have to cut pet projects back. Like, I get infrastructure work on West State Street, but if you can't afford your groceries, you should probably cut back, the features of, like, the infrastructure work, the groceries that you have to do. If you have to do a capital project, right? Like, if your house, if you have to, if your city is your house, right, and you have to put groceries into it, then you should, if you put groceries into it, then you should, to keep it sustainable and keep all the people in it alive, and which is, your police, your fire, you like, it's all the parts of your government structure, right? The things, the necessities that you need on a day-to-day basis. Those are groceries. But then you have capital improvements, right? Like, you have things like the infrastructure, the plumbing in the house, the gas system in the house, the sewer mains in the house, the roof that protects the house. If you have all these different things that are going on as well, and then it's like, well, we could put a pool in the backyard. It's like, let's cut the pool in the backyard. Let's cut the hot tub. Let's cut the bocce ball court, or the basketball court we really wanted to put in the driveway. Like, there's a lot of things that's like, okay, those are nice. They might attract a few new citizens here, but right now we can't afford the price of eggs. So if you can't afford the price of eggs, you don't go sit there and say, well, I'm going to take the extra money I could be using towards eggs and putting it into a pool or maintaining a pool or, whatever. It's like, you can't afford the luxuries. So don't cut the spending, cut the pet projects, cut the spending. And then you're still going to have to raise taxes by like 20%. Right? Like, if you jump on it now, it's only 20% now. And percent increase to cover inflation, or 2%, keep it at the tax cap to cover inflation and labor wages. And then, I mean, yeah, cut all the extra, cut all the things that you deem are fat, cut it. That's fine. But it's one of those, it's one of those difficult topics. Nobody wants to touch this. The third rail of politics. You're not going to touch that. And then also, you have to think that a 20% increase on your city tax bill, and this is something I was talking to somebody about yesterday. You have excuse the garbage trucks, if you can hear them. Anyways, here they come. They're coming. Your tax bill, to make the numbers easy, it's probably like 20% for the city of Olean. Out of all the property taxes you pay in a year, it's probably about 20% for the city of Olean, and it's about 30% for the county, give or take. Like, if you look at, like, if I look at my average tax bills, and it's probably like 22 and 28, and it's close. It's somewhere between a 20 to 30 ratio to a 25 to 25. Like, they're almost equal. And a large portion of it could be like 48%, but it's about 50% is your school taxes. And so if the city of Olean at the city level raises taxes, it only raises the one bill. So just so everybody's aware, you get a lot for your one bill. It's $54,000 or dollars per thousand or whatever. So if you have a $50,000 house, and then maybe it's 56 times $56. Oh man, I picked a perfect day for this. I guess every morning might not work. I might have to, or Kevin better not rant for 35 minutes, I guess is what it's getting at. $56 per thousand. Oh, duh, that's right. Okay. That's wrong too. Okay. $56 per thousand. Your house is worth $50,000. You pay $2,800 a year in taxes, which is about right. And I always tell this is an easy metronome to remember. Is the uh, $3,000 for every 50,000. So if your house is worth 100,000, it's easy to say I pay $6,000 in taxes, and we're really you pay $5,600 in taxes. Like I don't think anybody cares when you're having just a brief throwing numbers at people, keeping it simple, stupid. Those kissing numbers, right? So you're paying $3,000 in taxes. So we're gonna round that up, right? Because not everybody's house is worth 50 grand even. It's like 52, and now the housing market's through the roof, but they haven't done a refi. So lucky you, you get to sell your house for way more than it's worth, or you bought your house for way more than it used to be worth. Um, and you're paying taxes on the old system. So lucky you, right? If they did that, they wouldn't have to raise taxes at all. You'd also be paying double. I'm just letting everybody know that. So don't go wishing for certain things, because if we wish in one hand and poop in another, you know what they say. So you have a $3,000 tax bill. Divide that by 50%. So divide that by 2. Gives you 50. Man, everybody put their garbage out today. So you divide that. I almost have to pause and pick this back up tomorrow, don't I? But I'm not going to stop it. I'm not going to stop a working Joe from working, right? Um, so $3,000 divided by 2. You're paying $1,500 a year in school taxes, give or take, right? Okay. The other $1,500 that you're paying a year in in taxes are between the county and the city, and so half of that, roughly, is one or the other, right? So you're paying $750 to the school or to the city and $750 to the county. Now, actually, if you break down your county taxes, if you look at them, the line items, I don't know what the percentage is. I want to say it feels like you pay more. Sorry, waiting for the. Yeah, was there like a caravan of garbage trucks this morning? Anyways, you pay if you look at your county tax bill. I recommend that everybody who pays county taxes, everybody who gets a bill in. So if you're watching the show and you're a tenant, you're not going to see half this stuff, but you can look online. If you look at the line item on your bill, it says like county taxes, Medicaid. So if you ever look at that, there's a Medicaid portion of your taxes, and I'm gonna do some more diving into it, because it always strikes me as odd that that like I'm a large portion of my county tax bill is paying for other people's health insurance, but most people don't look at that because they hide it. It's like if you ever look at your phone bill. Luckily, the county only has. That's why I noticed it, because the county only has 2 lines on there. They show you your county taxes, and then they show you your Medicaid share. Um, and so it is kind of humorous, because if you look at a phone bill, a phone will have like 1,500 different line items, and you're not going to know which one's which, and some of them are mandated government stuff. So you're like, oh, how's my $20 month phone cost me $120 a month? Well, it's because there's $100 in miscellaneous government little taxes and stuff, and that's how they make their money. Like bed taxes, like all these other things that they're instituting. It's like, just raise one tax, man. Just raise one tax. So but yeah, that's the rabbit hole. And no one's gonna like that take. It's you're gonna have to increase taxes. You're gonna have to cut spending. So the people in office are not gonna like that you have to cut spending, because everyone's got their little pet project. Everyone's got their bugaboos. Oh, my ward needs this in this park, and my my ward complains about this issue, and we can revamp it with this huge project. And it's like, and we can beautify the city with this project, or I think it would be great if we did this and renovated that. And they're gonna hate that. They're gonna also be like, hey, it's Kevin Doherty. He's one guy. What is he gonna do? So he shouldn't say that. Okay, well, whatever. And then all the people out there in tax-paying land are gonna be like, oh, to raise our taxes 20%. Jesus Christ, you're nuts. Yeah, well, I'm not nuts. I'm just a realist. I think you're gonna have to make and I'm not saying that like I have a definitive number. Does it have to be 20%? Can we get away with 18%? Is it really like 24.7%? I'm just saying the my thumb is testing the pulse. Like, I'm not writing it down and then staring at the statistical data of the pulse. I'm just saying my gut is saying that you're going to have a large tax increase based on certain monikers, like you're only funding 45% of your road repairs. That's what I'm talking about. But that said, guys, I want to thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. It's been a long one this morning, 40-minute podcast. I'm sure none of you were listening to the whole thing. No, not none of you. There's a couple of you, diehard fans out there listening to my soothing voice, just like Bing Crosby. That's right. So anyway, guys, we will talk to you tomorrow on Life22. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and have yourself a splendid day. I never say that enough. Have yourself a splendid day. Enjoy the rain. Rain is beautiful too.